You miss someone who caused you pain, and that confuses you. Person sitting alone by a window, rain outside, you know the relationship was unhealthy. You know you were hurt. So why does your chest still tighten when you think of them? Why does absence hurt more than the damage ever did? And what if this longing isn't weakness, but something much deeper happening inside your brain? Slow-moving light patterns. 2. Problem deep dive. You replay small moments. A laugh, a message, the way they looked at you once. Not the fights, not the emotional exhaustion, not the nights you felt unseen. Just the fragments of connection, blurred memories fading in and out. And when you try to move on, something pulls you back. A feeling, a memory, a strange emotional gravity. You might even feel ashamed for missing them, ashamed for wanting someone who hurt you. So you tell yourself, I should be over this. I deserve better. I'm being stupid. But the missing doesn't stop. It shows up in quiet moments. Before sleep, during idle scrolling, when a song plays, phone screen glowing in dark room, and slowly it begins to shape your identity. You start seeing yourself as someone who can't let go, someone who gets attached too easily, someone who always chooses the wrong people. But what if that story isn't true? What if your brain is responding exactly the way it was wired to? And what if the reason you miss people who hurt you has almost nothing to do with love? Abstract brain animation. 3. Reframe. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not addicted to pain. This pattern is not a flaw. It's an adaptation. At some point in your life, your nervous system learns something important. Connection is unpredictable. Safety is inconsistent. Love comes mixed with stress. So your brain adjusted. It learned to survive emotional uncertainty. And now, it responds to emotional chaos as if it were familiar territory. Not because it feels good, but because it feels known. Visual. Person standing at edge of calm ocean. What feels familiar often feels safer than what feels healthy. And that single truth changes everything. But to really understand it, we need to look inside the brain. 4. Psychological mechanism. Your brain is a prediction machine. Its main job is not happiness. Its job is survival. It constantly asks one question: what pattern keeps me safe? And it builds emotional maps based on your past experiences. Visual, glowing neural pathways forming patterns. When connection and pain happen together repeatedly, your brain links them. Not consciously, but neurologically. This creates what psychologists call trauma bonding, but not in the dramatic sense. In simple terms, your nervous system becomes conditioned to emotional intensity. Here's a simple mental model. Imagine your emotional brain as a smoke detector. If you grew up or lived in unpredictable emotional environments, your detector becomes extremely sensitive. It learns that emotional spikes, even painful ones, mean connection is happening. So when calm, stable relationships appear, they feel unfamiliar, quiet, uneventful, almost empty. Visual, quiet, empty room with sunlight. But when emotional volatility shows up inconsistency, withdrawal, unpredictability, your detector lights up because your brain recognizes the pattern, not as danger, but as attachment. This is where neuroscience comes in. Intermittent emotional reinforcement, unpredictable affection mixed with withdrawal creates dopamine loops in the brain. Dopamine doesn't respond to reward. It responds to uncertainty. The less predictable the connection, the stronger the dopamine spike. So when someone gives you affection inconsistently, your brain becomes chemically hooked on trying to win that connection back. Visual, abstract dopamine pulse animation. This is the same mechanism behind gambling addiction, not because the reward is good, but because it's unpredictable. Now combine that with emotional attachment, and suddenly, your brain equates emotional pain with emotional bonding, which is why you don't miss the person. You miss the emotional intensity your nervous system associated with connection. But there's another layer: memory. Your brain stores emotional memories differently than factual ones. It softens the pain, but preserves the emotional peaks. So, over time, you remember the closeness more than the damage. Visual, fading memories, only bright ones remaining. This creates a distorted emotional highlight reel, and that's what pulls you back. But here's the quiet truth: you're not missing them. You're missing a version of connection your nervous system was trained to chase, and that realization changes how healing begins. 5. Practical framework. Not surface level advice. Not just move on. This is about retraining your nervous system. Slowly, gently, neurobiologically. Here's a framework grounded in psychology. Step 1. Separate the person from the pattern. What to do? When you feel longing, label it as pattern activation, not missing the person. Why it works in the brain? Naming a neural pattern activates your prefrontal cortex, the rational brain, which reduces emotional reactivity from the limbic system. Real life example: instead of thinking, I miss them, you say, my nervous system is reacting to emotional familiarity. This creates psychological distance, and that distance weakens emotional grip. Visual: notebook with one sentence written. Step 2. Track emotional intensity, not attachment. What to do? Notice when longing appears. Is it after loneliness, boredom, stress, or emotional fatigue? Why it works in the brain. Your brain seeks dopamine during emotional lows. Unhealthy attachments become emotional stimulants. Real life example: after a long day, instead of scrolling old photos, you pause and ask, what feeling am I actually trying to change right now? That awareness interrupts compulsive emotional loops. Visual, slow moving waves. Step 3. Introduce emotional stability gradually. What to do? Expose yourself to calm, predictable emotional experiences, friendships, routines, environments. Why? It works in the brain. Repeated exposure rewires emotional baselines through neuroplasticity. Real life example: spending time with emotionally consistent people may feel boring at first, but over time, your nervous system learns that calm does not equal danger. Visual: people quietly walking in sunlight. Step 4. Recondition safety through the body. What to do? Use body-based regulation, slow breathing, walking, stretching, grounding exercises. Why it works in the brain. The vagus nerve signals safety to your nervous system, reducing emotional craving. Real life example: when longing hits, you slow your breathing instead of chasing emotional stimulation. Your brain learns new emotional associations. Visual, slow breathing animation. Step 5. Build identity outside emotional chaos. What to do? Invest in interests, learning, creation, and solitude that feel grounding. Why it works in the brain. Identity diversification reduces emotional dependency circuits. Real life example: when your sense of self expands, emotional attachment loses its central role. Visual, person journaling quietly. Each step rewires a different part of the emotional loop, not instantly, but permanently. And slowly, something changes. The longing softens, the emotional pull weakens, and clarity begins to replace confusion. 6. Integration. Here's the simple model to remember. Your nervous system learned to confuse emotional intensity with emotional connection. Healing is teaching it that safety can be calm, not dramatic, not chaotic, not painful, just steady. Visual, calm, ocean horizon. When calm starts to feel safe, you stop missing people who hurt you. Not because you became stronger, but because your brain stopped mistaking chaos for love. And that shift changes who you choose, who you attach to, and how you define connection. 7. Quiet, empowering close. One day, you'll realize something quietly powerful. You don't miss them anymore. Not because they disappeared, but because your nervous system finally learned peace, and in that calm, you'll meet a version of yourself that doesn't need emotional pain to feel alive. Visual, person walking alone into soft light, and that version of you will choose connection that doesn't cost your peace.